share this afterwards just in case. Perfect. Thank you so much. So just wanted to quickly go over our introduction and a few housekeeping items. We're going to start off with just a quick intro and welcome. I would love to hear from all of our partners who are on the call today. So I'll go ahead and shout out each partner, and then they can briefly unmute if one person wants to introduce their collaborative, their region, where they're from. We're going to briefly go over the strategic goals of the program, just so you all can kind of get an idea of where we're coming from. But the main purpose of why we're all here today is to talk data. So we're going to go over what is this data plan, what to expect, and the next steps for this process. Today's session is also in a meeting format. I'm fairly casual as well, so please feel free to unmute yourself to ask questions, use the chat function. We'll have plenty of time at the end for questions too. The point of today is to try to get all of our questions answered as best as we can. So first off, I just wanted to start off by saying congratulations to all of our collaboratives. You all have worked so incredibly hard to get to this stage, and you have such great ideas and passion for supporting the learners in your communities. I know we're so excited to see what all of you are going to do with this grant. And I'd like for us to just take a quick moment to introduce ourselves. Again, I'll just go around and call out each partner really quickly just to say hello. And I'll start off with us, with OPSC. Barbara, would you like to say hello real quick?
Yeah, thank you. So see a few familiar faces and names. Barbara Kampminer, I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for the Office of Public School Construction. And we are the state agency that is overseeing the administration of the K16 program. So we're excited that you can be here today, and looking forward to seeing the outcomes start to come in from these exciting plans. Everybody's applications had just some really neat things in them, and we're really excited to see how you make some changes or enhancements to your regional efforts. So looking forward to that. Thank you. We also have today Michael from OPSC.
Yeah, welcome. I'm Michael Watanabe. I'm Chief of Program Services for OPSC. And as Barbara mentioned, we're looking forward to seeing what everybody does with the grant money.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. And then I'll pass it over to Foundation. Cesar, if you want to quickly just say hi.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Cesar Margarito. I'm representing the Foundation for California Community Colleges today. My title is the Senior Specialist with Strategic Support for Colleges and Scholars. I have two other colleagues that are on the program as well. They couldn't be here today, but we are the support system for OPSC as a third-party administrator for this program.
Great, thank you so much. And then I'm going to start off with, do we have anyone from the border region with us who'd like to say hi?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Deneen Brown, and I'm with the San Diego and Imperial counties. Awesome. And I believe Sally Cox will be joining us. We're in Palm Springs right now for a conference, so I think she might have gotten stuck. So she'll be here as soon as she can.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoy your conference. Thanks for joining while you're there. Appreciate it. All right, and I'll pass it next to any rep from Inland Empire.
Sure. Good afternoon. Brian Haynes, Vice Chancellor, Student Affairs here at University of California, Riverside, joined by Alicia Velasquez, and she'll introduce herself in a few moments. But UCR is the lead agency on the Inland Empire grant, and we're really excited to have this conversation, kickoff conversation this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Haynes. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Alicia Velasquez, Executive Director of Educational and Community Outreach Programs, and super excited to be here and see so many people. There's always comfort in groups, so super excited to get started, and thank you for having this, Alex.
Thank you both so much. Yeah, definitely comfort in knowing we're all in the same boat and we're going to get through it together, right? And then I'll pass it over to someone from LA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Millie Kudo, and I'm here with LACCD. I love everyone's enthusiasm, so I'm excited to also dive into the data in the meeting. So I'm just happy to be here. And awesome. I don't know if anyone else is on the call from LACCD, but I will give them some space to talk to.
Hi, I'm Bettina Vaina. I'm also from LACCD. I'm the program specialist in the Office of Student Success. I work very closely with Deborah Harrington. So as a lead agency, we will I will be responsible for the contracting and financials reporting, but I'm also here just to collect information on the data to see how I can be of support in that area as well.
And I'm Carrie Lamont. I'm the Vice President of Systems Change Strategy at Unite LA. We're a nonprofit that serves as a regional intermediary between education, workforce, and private industry. And we're the regional convener for the LA Region K16 Collaborative. And I have some colleagues with me, Adam Gottlieb, and then Rachel with WestEd, also joining from the LA team.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. And then I think Tess and Maya, I didn't tell you beforehand, but from CCGI, would either of you like to quickly just say hello?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Tessa DeRoy. I'm the president of the California College Guidance Initiative. We manage californiacolleges.edu on behalf of the state, and participation in this grant is connected to participation in California colleges. So we're here to answer questions and looking forward to hearing what all of you have to say today. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much again. I'm going to start us off by just taking a moment to walk through some of the strategic goals of the program. Just so you all can kind of know where we're coming from with a lot of these decisions, especially when it comes to the data reporting. So we have 7 key strategic goals for the program. The top 4 on this slide are going to be reflecting our big picture aspirational goals, and the bottom 3 are reflecting more of our process-oriented things that we'd like to accomplish. Our primary goal in all of this is to support you all as you develop and streamline your equitable pathways from high school to post-secondary education and then into the workforce. By the end of the grant, we're hoping to see fully established career pathways with increases in the number of students earning degrees, certificates, and credentials. In addition to pathway completion, career attainment is also so important. We'd love to see our students receiving high quality, high wage jobs in the economic sectors identified by each collaborative within their priority areas. In addition to supporting pathway work, we also want to promote equitable student success strategies based on the 2021 Recovery with Equity report. By the end of the grant, we'd really love to see your RWE strategies, as you will probably hear me call them many times over the course of the next couple of years, fully implemented with demonstrated increases in retention with minimal equity gaps. Another strategic goal is to increase the utilization of the Cradle to Career data system and its tools like CCGI. Ideally, we'd really love to see our collaborative partners fully participating in the Cradle to Career data system, and we're hoping to establish longitudinal data sets based off of these collaborative pathway cohorts that can be leveraged in the future by researchers to conduct some pretty innovative analyses. And finally, we want to foster sustained, spontaneous cross-sector collaboration within each SERF region and with state agencies. We hope to see all of your collaboratives sustain far beyond the end of this grant and utilize additional state initiatives or new funding opportunities to braid into your current efforts to sustain all of your good work far beyond the end of this grant. Additionally, we would like for the state to play a more active role as a collaborator in your efforts. As the ones who are doing the work, you all are the experts in understanding the challenges and the roadblocks faced in implementing state policies. Oftentimes, the state is a lot farther removed from these efforts, and moving forward, we'd really like to work together with you all to understand what are the roadblocks so we can find solutions together to establish a more responsive state policy cycle. Finally, moving on to the last 3 items, kind of at the bottom row of the screen here. Number 5 is what we're going to talk about most in depth today, which is co-developing evaluation plans and your data plans. And items 6 and 7 are about identifying best practices within your pathway plans and within the granting process itself. Since you all are taking your own innovative approaches to your pathway and RWE implementation, we want to make sure that we're highlighting all of the really cool, effective, and innovative practices that can be adopted by other collaboratives or other organizations across the state or the nation. We all are doing such good work. We want to make sure that we're highlighting the wonderful things that you're doing and use them as models for future groups to try to utilize. So the main part, though, of why we were here today is to talk about the data. So today, that's what we are going to focus on. First, what I want to do is talk a little bit about this custom evaluation process. It's a term that you've probably heard me throw out a couple of times to walk through what exactly this is, why we're taking this approach, and then talk about the difference between the data report and some of the other reports that you'll be responsible for in the collaborative. So this custom evaluation process, we do not want this to be a typical grant evaluation. Especially because you all are going to be taking on your own activities, your own pathways, your own goals. It doesn't make sense to try to fit everyone into the same reporting box because everyone's going to have their own things that they're doing. Outside of that too, I know I've worked on providing data for grants before where I'm handed, here you go, here's what we need to report on. And it doesn't make sense. I'm like, we don't track our definitions in this way. This doesn't make sense for us. And we don't want that to happen for this grant. We want it to make sense for you. And on top of that, again, you all are the experts in your regions. You know what's important to be tracking. And we want you to have a say in what you're reporting on for this grant. So my role in all of this is to support you through this data reporting process. For a little bit of background on my experience as well, I am actually in the Fresno region, and I worked really closely with the Fresno Area Collaborative as it was starting on its data sharing projects. And I've used their cross-institutional data to track college-going habits and dual enrollment trends and equity issues. And that also means I've dealt with a lot of the challenges and roadblocks of doing the data sharing work firsthand, so I know how challenging it can be. So as we're going through the process, I'm here for you if you want to talk through questions and help find solutions. I'd like to be here for you as much as you would like me to be. So that's the approach we're taking to this custom evaluation. Is really, we just want it to be sure that it makes sense for your region and that you all have a say in what you're tracking. Now, I want to talk a little bit as well about distinguishing the difference between some of the reports you're responsible for, because you guys are juggling a lot. So I want to be sure that we kind of clear up what is the data report, how is it different from some of these others. So the expenditure report and the progress narrative, these are separate documents. You might have heard of these two terms before. These relate more directly to accountability and compliance, whereas for the data, this is where we're looking at your outcomes on the pathways, more of the student-focused outcomes. The expenditure report, pretty self-explanatory. That's where you're going to report your expenditures. The progress narrative is going to be a great place for you to summarize a lot of your progress and good work, and maybe things that don't quite fit into the quantitative data report. So that could be things like if you're adding additional workforce partners to your steering committee or expanding your work to other parts of the region. Those are all really good things we want to make sure are captured, but maybe they don't quite fit in a table or a spreadsheet per se. So that good work would be captured maybe in the progress narrative. And then finally, the data report is where we're going to be reporting on our student-focused outcomes, the quantitative data metrics. So while the expenditure report and progress narrative will be submitted on a quarterly basis, the data report is only going to be submitted twice a year. And we did this because we want to ensure that the data you're having to submit to us is meaningful. And I know that a lot of these metrics, they're not updated on the same frequency as quarterly. So we don't want you to do reporting just for the sake of doing it. So we want to be sure that whenever you are having to submit, that you have data to submit to us and that it's meaningful and that we're streamlining these efforts. So before we dive into the weeds and the nitty-gritty of the data report, I want to pause for a moment and see any questions so far about some of this high-level stuff before we get down into it. Okay, awesome. So we're going to talk about what exactly is going to be included in these data reports. I have these categorized into 3 buckets almost. So the data you're going to be reporting on will cover specified metrics, custom metrics, and metrics related to your CCGI adoption. The specified metrics are going to be data points that every collaborative will report on. These are going to cover things like student enrollment, retention, persistence, completion rates, etc. Each of these metrics is going to be the same for every collaborative. So everyone's going to be reporting on these. Ideally, they will be based on pathway cohorts, and we'll collect these data points for every pathway that you're setting out to implement, and we're going to disaggregate them by student race and ethnicity and student socioeconomic status. The next kind of category here are going to be the custom metrics, and these are the ones that we're going to work really closely on creating together that will be specific to each collaborative's goals and vision. There are some data points that we'll want to see at a minimum within this category, but how they're defined is going to be up to every collaborative. Again, this is where we really want to make sure that for these metrics, these are going to be more about your RWE activities or some of your other activities that don't directly relate to like pathway enrollment. So we're going to work on building these out together. So for an example, I have this table here. I'm looking at the RWE goals that you might be having as a column on the left in this table and some example metrics in the middle and then on the right. Let's say, for example, that your collaborative has selected the first RWE strategy, that you want to improve faculty, staff, and administrator diversity. You all, even if each of you on the call today have selected this goal, you're going to have different plans on how exactly you're going to do this. So we want to be sure that the metrics that we're tracking align with your activities and how you're going to get this done. So we'll have some things that we want to see at a minimum, like for this goal, we'd probably want to see the number of faculty disaggregated by race and ethnicity, but how these are going to be defined will be up to each collaborative. And this is where we have a lot more flexibility of if you want to add additional things or swap things out, this is where we'll work together to really make sure that what we're tracking really fits with your goals and your outcomes. So finally, we're also going to be keeping track of the progress in onboarding with CCGI. This is going to include the number of K-12 partners that are in contract with CCGI and progress along the adoption timeline. Another note, a great thing about CCGI is that they have been very generous in that they are actually offered to directly report to us about the CCGI adoption, which means that your collaboratives don't have to worry about trying to report on this or tackle this. So this is one less thing that you will not have to be responsible for as far as the data reporting, which is great. But something else I wanted to highlight is that if you're using additional CCGI tools, maybe for your RWE strategies, like you want to use them for your high-tech advising, they've actually offered to provide reporting on some of these metrics for you. So again, something even less to deal with in the data report. So really encourage all of your collaboratives to reach out to them to set up kind of your first meeting to talk about getting kickstarted on the onboarding process and how they could help support your collaborative in the data reporting as well. I have their email here on the screen. I'll make sure everyone has this at the end as well. So how exactly, now we know what's in the data report, how exactly is this going to happen? How are we building this thing out? And really it's going to start with us co-building this data reporting plan. Essentially, you will have two documents that you'll need to complete. The one on the left is going to be your data plan, data work plan that you see a screenshot example of here. And eventually you're going to have a data dictionary, which you see an example of on the right. So the first step in all of this is to use your work plan that you all have already submitted to fill in the data work plan. And I'm sorry for naming this so similar to your regular work plan. These are two different documents, so forgive me for that one. But essentially, you're going to take your work plan, all of your plans of what you're going to do over the course of the grant, and then use this template that I've created to start identifying your different goals and your outcomes and how we translate these into data points. Essentially, there's going to be kind of like a logic model or a table that you'll fill out for each pathway or RWE strategy that your collaborative is planning to implement. If you have other metrics that you want to track that don't explicitly fall into these buckets, or you want to try to structure it in a different way, that's totally fine. It's up to you guys of how you want to exactly fill this out. You can add, subtract tables and lines in them as needed. When the data work plan is complete, you can then send it to me and then we'll work on a time to set up our first meeting. And at this meeting, we'll go over your data work plan. I'll give you some feedback on trying to streamline it to make sure that this is manageable for the course of the grant, that we're hitting all the outcomes that we need to. And we'll start working on that definition process. We'll kind of work on turning your goals into your data metrics. And oftentimes that's the hardest part of the process, is kind of translating things into spreadsheets. So I'll be here to be your data translator. We'll work on that together and we'll fill out the data dictionary. Finally, once we've kind of had that first meeting, I will create a draft of your data dictionary. This will be a running one-stop shop of every data point that you will be collecting for the collaborative, all laid out explicitly with the definitions. We'll pass that back and forth a bit to make sure that your collaborative is good with it, you feel comfortable. And once that's all set, I will work on building out your custom reporting templates. This is basically the spreadsheet full of tables that you will use to just pop your data into over the course of the grant. So that's essentially the process. It's a little bit more of a lift at the beginning because I'd like to set things up for you guys to have this done so you can focus on doing the work, implementing it, and not having to worry about trying to think about data halfway through the course of the grant. So for next steps, after this session today, we talk through questions. I will send out the documents that you'll need to the lead agency contact. That'll be a copy of this presentation and the PowerPoint. It'll be the data reporting guidelines. It's just a document going over everything I've talked about today and your data work plan template. Once you have a first draft of that, you can send it to me via email, and then we'll work on trying to set up a first meeting for going over feedback for the data plan. As far as timeline of when everything is due, you have 60 days from your receipt of funds to submit the completed data plan and data dictionary. So I know for most of us, this might not actually, our clock might not have started yet necessarily for this. So we still have a little bit of time, but those 60 days go very quickly. So please feel free to, let me know if you have any additional questions. If you want to set up a meeting before you even start the first draft of the data work plan, I'm happy to do that and answer any questions that you or your team might have about this process. And I just so look forward to working with all of you. I have been talking for a while now, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to take a moment now. I want to hear what questions you all have, what I can answer about this process.
I have a question. Can you go back to the slide that had kind of the required data metrics that we have to report on?
Sure, absolutely. Give me 1 second here. Pull it back up. Okay, I think this one, does that one look right?
Yeah, this is fine, or the next one. So this specified metrics. So and I feel like we're kind of lucky in a way because the other consortium have already done their plans. So as we're collecting data from them, can we collect it aggregated, or do we need to collect at a student data level? Like I'm thinking of, if they can aggregate it, then our data sharing might be a little bit easier to manage, and like privacy and protections and all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking that question. That is a really great question. Most of everything that you're going to be submitting is aggregated. So essentially, when we're talking about enrollment, things of that sort, for these data reports, you're not going to need to be submitting student level data to me. If that's something that it's easier and you'd like to do it, I'm happy to, take that. But I think for the most part, aggregate is what we're looking at here for just summary.
And you guys are okay with us collecting aggregated data as well, right?
Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, but I think that should be no problem. So we can get down to the details of what exactly that'll look like. But that should be no problem. Everything you'll be reporting to us is going to be rolled up to an aggregate level.
Okay.
Adam, yeah.
Can you go to the next slide, please? With
this one here.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, just so I can see some of those. The one question that came to mind when I saw one of the first ones, the LA Collaborative has retained students through inclusive supports on theirs, and one of the required metrics is campus climate survey results. Are those campus climate surveys? So many campuses do campus climate surveys pretty regularly, or every like 4 to 5 years, depending on their capacity and institutional effectiveness. Are we developing new surveys for this, or is it just general when campuses have done that in recent past?
That's going to be completely up to you all. And I am all for trying to leverage and utilize collection strategies that are already in place instead of trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. So if we're looking at like campus climate survey results, I think that trying to utilize if there's already surveys that are pre-existing that get sent out on a semi-regular basis, that's totally okay. So this isn't necessarily something, again, that like you have to create a new survey and send it out to every, partner, because everyone's not, everyone's going to be doing slightly different things even within a collaborative. So again, that's going to be something that we can work on defining out how exactly you all would want to do that. But I'm completely supportive of trying to leverage pre-existing data collection efforts. And most of the points that I've tried to bring up for things that are required should be data items that most institutions are collecting on a pretty regular basis, and that should be pretty easy to pull.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about some of like we talked about yesterday, LA being just a large area with so many different partners, those doing very different things. I mean, I'm sure with some of these required metrics on this slide and the other, there was have to be time considerations. I imagine in some cases that even biannually might be, there'll be different data metrics depending on how some of our campuses collect and when some of our campuses collect.
Absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of room for flexibility here in for these kind of like example of required metrics and additional metrics. If there's something in here that just completely doesn't fit with what you all are doing, we can work on it as long as we're getting getting to the point of trying to measure the outcomes for, retaining students through inclusive support. At the minimum, like for that, we want to try to measure retention at something, but how exactly we're going to be doing that, whether that's campus climate survey or, we can figure that out in detail. So I want to really stress that there is a lot of flexibility here of us figuring out the best way to measure some of these things based off of your collaborative work and trying to make this as streamlined as possible too.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Other questions? Any other questions? These have been great so far.
A follow-up question for LA. I'm just thinking about our proposed sub-regional RFP process, and that having this template will be really great to guide the applications from our sub-regions and their pathways. But all of that I don't see happening within 60 days after we finalize our grant agreement. Since planning on doing our sub-regional process in like Q1 2023.
Right. So for that 60 days, that's really just to have the plan in place. And there is some flexibility too about, a lot of our collaboratives, they are doing the sub-award process. And there is a little bit of a delay between, when we're meeting now and talking about this to when a lot of those plans are actually going to be happening. And so I do recognize that and want to let you know that we understand that a lot of that takes a little bit of time to get those implemented. And I think the way that I'm looking at it is exactly how you put it, is using this as a guide for maybe some of those RFPs, of knowing that, we're going to sub-award out and, get these applications in, but we want to know at a minimum from these different pathways, this are the data points that you're going to collect. So it's really clear to them their expectations on what they're going to have to do. So as far as when your first data report will be due, as far as when we want some of that baseline data, I'm imagining that as sometime in January for this group. That being said, it's kind of, I'm trying to be very flexible again and open with these plans. I know that they take a little bit of time to get the work going. So it's kind of like let's fill in what we can and start collecting what we can, what's available. And if it's a really big, if there's nothing that's going to be in there, we'll talk and we'll figure out a way to, we'll see what we can do for that.
Okay. And would you be able to work with us, Alex, as we're developing the RFP questions to make sure that we're have a template or something for the data to get at the answers that you need?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to help support, once we have this data plan in place, trying to either help create a template or really structure it so that it's aligned really well. I'm happy to provide some feedback and support for that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, any other thoughts, questions, concerns about, what we're seeing today for this data process? All right, well, that's quick and easy. Lovely. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to come and listen to my spiel. I'll be sending each of the lead agencies, the lead agency contacts, your information of kind of next steps and how to get started. Carrie, yes.
Sorry, I just remembered another question.
No, of course. Thank you.
One of the PowerPoint slides mentioned like tracking cohorts of students. And so I don't know, I'm trying to think through like some of, of course, they're not seamless pathways right now, which is why students are falling off of them. But even then, like students jump around. And so, you know, in high school, there might be a wide array of dual enrollment options and A to G courses that then feed into a few pathways, and you might not have identified all the students yet who are going to be. So it doesn't quite feel like a traditional cohort where there's going to be a student, you know, 100 students start in 9th grade and they're continuing through like grade 14 or 16. So how do we account for that?
Yeah, and that's a great point as well. And a lot of our other collaboratives too have been working through that same kind of question, that I think that because everyone's pathways are going to look so different, a lot of our pathways, like you said, they might have multiple entry or exit points, that it might not be a traditional, I start as a junior in high school and I'm with my same class of students moving all the way through college. Most of the pathways actually aren't going to look like that. And so I think sometimes we have to kind of wrangle for the data cohorts of students, but how we're going to define maybe like how that's enrolled or kind of at what points we're tracking them. That's something that we can kind of be creative on trying to create cohorts for this data model, that we want to make sure that they're reflective of your start and ending points for your pathway. So that's definitely something that we want to reflect in these data plans, that even though we say cohort based, we understand that it might not be structured that way. So we can try to wrangle, again, defining what does that mean for your collaborative, for this specific program or pathway, and how are we going to reflect that in the data plan and make sure that that's accurate. So there's definitely flexibility for, you know, these cohort models of, you know, not necessarily, you don't need to restructure your plans by any means. We'll work with what you guys are seeing and envisioning for your cohort or your pathway programs.
Okay.
Thank you for your flexibility, and it's really nice to work with somebody who's insightful and has that experience. I'm at a conference right now. We're talking about data and everyone's like pulling their hair out, and this is very refreshing. So
well, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you. Yeah, we understand too that this grant, it's a very different approach. We're trying to leave a lot of room, like you all know what's best for your region. And so especially within the data, we want to make sure that that's reflected here. And I know the data can be a hair pulling. Even I have times where I want to pull my hair out with it too. So it can definitely be a stressful process, but I'm absolutely here to try to help as much as I can walk through these solutions and problems and make it less of a, you know, I'm losing my hair process here. So I'm so excited to work with you all as well.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, thank you all so much. I'll give us all, you know, an extra, 20 minutes or so back to our days. Just thank you all